Welcome to Gabriels Gospel Grace, where you will receive wisdom and the Word of God.
I was going to say, on your point of vulnerability there, and as you were saying, there's no real certainties, and the fact that you are exposed and you are vulnerable, and it's almost a gamble when you stand at that altar. But my point is that they're the things that make life worth it. If we always know the outcome, it's trivia. It's easy. I mean, we have this thing now, don't we? This is where I'm going to upset people, but I'm from the days when you could go into a race, especially as kids, and there will be a winner. Not everybody, all
That's
six contestants. I know I'm pushing the boundaries, pushing the envelopes on Gabriel's Gospel Grace. But now it's a participation. We all took part. And to be honest, if you've never ran before, the fact you took part is a first step into stepping forward. But the point is, you don't go in with the attitude of losing. You go in with the attitude of winning.
Yeah.
But you have to be willing to still lose everything. That's what makes it a challenge. I mean, I think back to when I went to university, and at the time, you're about to take on a massive student loan. I was about to take a very academic subject that my past credentials would have said I wouldn't be capable of competing and completing. And at the end of it, would there be a job? Could I pay back the loan? What's it going to cost me? But that mountain, that 4 years of university, when you took that first step on day one, you just say, I'm committed to doing what it takes. And of course it's challenging, and then there's highlights, and then it gets tougher, and when you think you've just about mastered it, a new subject comes along and throws in even more challenges. And I think that's a good example, especially if anyone out there is academic and they've gone through that process, especially if you're fearing marriage. Did you really go into a degree? I mean, unless it's a humanities. Did I say that? But I'm just winding people up. But the point is, it's still a case of, nothing certain. And in fact, that's the point. To really enjoy and grow in a situation, you have to be willing to put yourself out there. And I think that's the vulnerability that marriage relies on if you want it to be a success.
That's right. And that is the basis of covenant as we see it demonstrated in the Old Testament. I mean, these concepts aren't all in one passage. They're sort of gleaned from all over. But when there was a covenant between two parties that wanted to go together, perhaps two parties that had been warring each other, they would come together in a covenant, which would start by each taking off their robes, their clothes, their outer clothes, symbolizing the end of, their clothes represented all that they had, in a sense, and they're taking that off and leaving it behind and entering into a new life. You remember Bartimaeus, that blind man who was begging by the road, and Jesus comes by and he calls out to him, and the crowd all first of all tell him to shut up because they said Jesus won't be interested in you, but he just cries out the more. And then Jesus says, go and call him. And they say, cheer up, he's calling you, go to him. And what did he do? He takes his robe off. That is very significant, because he's saying this is the end of the old way of life. In those days, of course, whereas people who can't see have a white stick nowadays, there was a particular robe that was indicative of somebody who was blind and was a beggar. He was casting that beggarly life off and going towards Jesus with a faith that things were going to change, with a faith that his life was going to be different. And this is what we see here in the covenant, casting off the old way. I'm not going to be the same person ever again. The old life, it is gone.
When you look at that in the light of the marriage service, the part of the marriage is that we begin a new life together in the community. So no longer are we two single people, but we are one new couple.
That's right.
Starting a new life, a new adventure. But also I like that in covenants, the person would take off their belt, which doesn't mean that their trousers are going to fall down. It was symbolizing where they kept their weapons and their tools, the things that they plied their trade with or fought with. So that was very significant.
I mean, it meant the end of hostility between them if there had been hostility.
Yeah.
But there was an exchange of weapons. In a sense, again, they were vulnerable because they had nothing to defend themselves. They just had to trust in the other person.
Yeah.
But they shared their weapons so that they engaged in a common fight. You know, your friend's my friend and your enemy is my enemy kind of thing.
It's a wonderful thing, because instead of being at war with each other and hostile, together they would be able to extend their territory, working together. That's really good.
Yeah, that's right. And so there's that idea, we're in this together. We're all in this together. I think I like to quote that song. Don't need to sing it. But it says, my strength belongs to you and your strength belongs to me. And there's that synergistic
relationship.
Yeah, so it's not just 1 + 1, or it's a multiplication of resources by coming together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Together we become much more than we could have been individually on our own.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good.
And of course, then in these covenants, and this is what is familiar with marriage, there's the exchange of names. I mean, it was just struck me as I was thinking about this earlier on, really, because it affects the woman, the wife, more than it does the husband, although there are exceptions to that. But I mean, you totally gave up your maiden name, Liu, to become Mrs. Sharp.
And much as I loved my maiden name, I was pretty happy to give it up because nobody could spell it. I come from Guernsey. It was kind of French. And so everybody, Li, who, you Chinese? You know, so Sharp is just cool. I'm happy with Sharp. So I don't need to be isolated.
It's to the point.
Yes.
Well
to the
done.
point.
Yes. Yeah.
That joke there.
Sharp's the action. Sharp's the action.
But really, a name conveys your identity, doesn't it? And who you are. And especially in ancient times when the names you had sort of bore a prophetic significance or were indicative of your character.
Or your profession. You could have been like, your family could have been knife sharpeners, couldn't they?
Yeah, I suppose.
Or, you know, that's possible.
I think Liu, which is spelled Lihou, for those who are wondering, Liu
Means a little hill.
Means a little hill.
And where I come from, there's a little island called Liu Island. Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
But there's that giving up. But there are some families, and we know some, where they take on each other's names. So in our instance, it would become Liu Sharp, wouldn't it? So I would be Andrew Liu Sharp, and you would be Jasmine Liu
Sharp.
Sharp.
Posh, but I'd rather take on my husband's name. Again, it's a commitment. It's leaving your family and starting a new life in a new family.
Yeah, the end of the individuality and coming into the union of two.
Well, I mean, in a true sense, it's a true hybridization, isn't it? You're bringing it together.
Yeah.
I mean, I was contemplating just the other day the term partnership.
Right.
Partnership literally defines equality, 50-50. And as you were saying, if we bring our territories together, it's more of a companionship than a partnership. And I think, again, coming back to this thing about double barreling names and things like that, often it's about a sense of one feels stronger than the other. And I think this is taken as a way, and a part of the marriage problems of the world today is this sense of equality being a 50-50 split, as opposed to seeing equality being we have our own responsibilities, our own areas, our own lands, our own thoughts, but we come together, we're stronger together, as you say. I mean, even if you had a farm, is it equal balance of livestock versus, arable? Or is one going to be bigger than the other? But at the end of the day, you need both, and the combination of both is what works. It's not about this almost fake equality, because it's not about being equal. It's about being something new.
And it's because of love. Jesus in John 13, before he went to the cross, it said that he, having loved his own who were in the world, loved them to the end. And it was that love that took him to the extreme sacrifice. He gave himself completely so that he could have a family. So, it's that love that will enable you not just to say, well, I'm holding on to my bit and I'll keep control of my bit, while you have your bit together but not together. So it's letting go, and it's love that doesn't fear the outcome. So love doesn't have to stay in control. It can move forward, even if it loses significantly. It's still willing to give and to self-sacrifice for the greater good of the relationship.
Yeah, and it's fear. I mean, I think fear plays a part in all of that. You know, this thing about feeling equal is either I fear the loss of something, or I fear you're gaining more than me. But again, you come back to the covenant, that the covenant says, hey, listen, you can have nothing, I can have everything. That could turn around in 24 hours, but we're still together, and love is keeping us together.
It really is, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like indefinable thing sometimes, but it's real, intangible but real.
And it does. Vulnerability is a word that keeps coming up, doesn't it? And surrender and sacrifice, although that's a word we don't like nowadays. But it is that total giving of ourselves. I mean, another aspect of the blood covenant was the taking of a sacrifice and splitting it in two from head to toe. And then the two parties that were involved in making the blood covenant would walk in opposite directions around a figure of 8, which of course is that we would say the symbol for infinity, wouldn't they? Yep. And they would meet in the middle of this carcass that had been split in two with blood everywhere. It's rather gory, isn't it?
Very rich in symbolism.
Rich in symbolism. But there, in the middle, when they come face to face in the middle of the 8, they make their promises to each other, their vows to each other. And the significance of it is it is speaking about sacrifice. Again, I'm giving everything, I'm promising everything to you. But there's also that seriousness about it, that if I break this covenant, may it be done to me as it's being done to this animal. You know, and that's not the intent. We're so serious about this. Till death us do part.
Yeah.
You see.
Yeah.